Hello, this is Greg Flowers in the Koombana Museum at Port Hedland on the 1st of September 2022. I'm speaking with Mr. Arnold Carter, who's been a long time Port Hedland resident, and we're just going to talk about a brief history of what's occurred in the port since Mr. Carter came here. Mr. Carter currently provides a great discussion at the Koombana Museum behind Dalgety House in Port Hedland. Good afternoon, Arnold. I wonder if you could just tell me briefly about your time when you came to Port Hedland and what you were doing.
Yeah, good afternoon, Greg. Arnold here. I arrived in Port Hedland on February the 23rd of 1962. And the reason for my arrival in Port Hedland was that I had done negotiations with the present successful exporter of iron ore in Mount Goldsworthy Mining Associates. I employed them as an accountant to do the feasibility study of the amount of iron ore presently being available for exportation.
So just saying, there was a lack of information, especially in the early days, about where the Koombana might even be.
Well, that's completely, because remember when the ship was going to history, that when the ship disappeared, there was 10 or 12 ships operating between Roebourne and Broome, just trying to get some debris or some identification of where it could or where it possibly could be. And they have taken nothing. And the only thing that was reasonably, to my best of my knowledge, and that's purely only through reading the academical reports, was those doors which were shown on the film, which were sent away for Sunrise to make sure that they did eventually leave or were part and parcel of the ship making of the Koombana, that they definitely come off it. And that was to my knowledge, the only thing that recognised the disappearance of the Koombana were those two doors, nothing else.
So what happened over time with your organisation? You said you knew you'd have to change the way it was operating to get more funding.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
Well, we then decided that for a few years we were pretty dormant. Then we decided that we would like to re-establish the Dalgety House, and we made application to the federal government, and they gave us a amount of $500,000 for the rebuilding of the Dalgety House and the surrounding areas. And our committee then put up the further security to buy the house and the properties which we now own, and which are now our lifeline for allowing this association to continue running. Yeah.
So when the Koombana left in 1912, there was a bar that it had to get over. Can you just tell me a bit about your knowledge of what's been happening to the port since you came here with the changes?
Well, the bar has always been an obsession, because not only did it have an obsession with the state ships in those days, you're not talking about nothing compared with 200,000 tonners that we had to then look at as being removed in the establishment of the iron ore industry. And that was the biggest bar that they've got, because when the tender documentations come out for the dredging to remove that bar and do a summary of the dredging channel, there was none, not one from anywhere in the world. So it was only after Utah dredging then, which was part and parcel of Utah Construction and Mining, was the parcel that they were in Japan and they then decided, well, they had to, because they just signed a deal about the supply of the iron ore. So they bought the Almeida was the name, and brought her out to the port, and after 2.5 weeks, I think, to get here, and then they started doing their dredge, and then they stuck the same trouble as what the samples indicated. So then in the summary, they then asked permission to use dynamite.
Yeah. And
they said yes, they were. So on low tide, they used to go out and drill into the concrete things at the entrance to the harbour, and then on high tide, they used to explode it. And then after they're exploding, then they would bring the dredges in, and the cutter dredges, and then they could then starting to remove the thing because of the fragmentation of the bar that was existing to the Port Hedland, and that bar not only stopped at the but it did go out for quite some considerable time, and that was the biggest hurdle we had in getting the establishment up of the export of the iron ore.
So we had some changes to the harbour. Can you tell me about and changes of the use of the harbour over the time? Can you just tell me about some of the fishing that you saw going on, or harbour activities aside from the change to iron ore being a major port activity?
Well, the port itself, before it started with the iron ore, was just what it is, a small commercial port. And all the shipping used to come in here. The only export we had under those days was manganese, and that was about 4 or 5 ships per year. But in other places there was a traversal of the state ships that used to run from Fremantle through to Broome and Darwin. And they used to come up on a fortnightly basis. So that was the only thing that the port was used for. It was never used for industry at all. It was just commercial, and it was also used for the transportation of all the bales of wool and stuff like that, which were derived through the area, but commercial-wise, in its present state, never ever considered.
So who were some of the fishing activities that went on at that when you've been here?
Oh, we used to have prawns. We used to have crays, crabs, and mainly prawning and fishing. And the others come in. The specialists come in at a later date. Was the scampi, which was very, very dear, and that used to be done by Carlos's, and that was a very, very deep water product, and it didn't last very long, even though they got good money for it.
So you're trying to build up a war chest for the potential to do some searching. We were trying to
build up a confirmation that it was somewhere, that we had to very well go asking people to go and look for a boat of that size and of that tonnage, and you can't even supply them with a paddle. So you're not putting them in the direction of where they should be going at all. And that was the main problem with the Koombana, was that there was no specifics of where it went down, and no specifics of how it went down. It's only been an estimate by professional people and by people who have studied the disappearance of the Koombana. And personally, I'm not a diver of any description. I think they're gone off the shelf.
Do you think with recreational fishermen having such boats with great capabilities and really good depth sounders on them now to find good places to fish, that it's possible that just a recreational fisherman out there looking for good fishing spots might pick up pick up the wreck on their sounder while they're trolling around?
He'd have as much chance of doing that as what he would on winning charities. He would have to have something completely that's floated up from the substandard of the ocean, that's floating around. He certainly would never ever pick it up by doing fish. When I done the analysis of reading the documentation, I would have thought that when they developed this ship here to get over the bar, that once they got over the bar, a whole lot of that ship would have gone indoors. The whole lot would have gone into their cabins. And I haven't mentioned the other thing, that I do believe that the ballasting had a lot to do with it. I think when they de-ballasted the ship prior to getting over the thing, they had to then ballast out to sea. They had to take on more ballast. They would never have survived in a cyclone with a half-ballasted ship. And whether that had a tornado when they started taking on one side, whether it slipped it, but my own vision of that ship is going straight down. That's what my own vision of that is. There was no bashing around with it at all. It just went straight down. And went somewhere down somewhere very deep. Yeah, because I'm not even quite sure when or how long after the ship had disappeared when they found those doors.
There's some days afterwards. It might even be more. I think it's more than a week.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that's identified that ship is those doors. If it was in short, shallow water, you would have been getting bits and pieces of debris coming up, breaking ashore. But when they're getting down in there, and remember it's a steel ship,